Our top focus as of now, after nearly a week-long vote count, Kenya's Electoral Commission chief has now declared the Deputy President William Ruto as the winner of the presidential polls. This followed last-minute chaos as 4 senior election officials distanced themselves from the final results. The 4 of 7 electoral commissioners told journalists on Monday that they could not support what they called opaque nature of the final phase of the vote verification process and thus cannot take ownership of the results.
Some things need to be put out there. As you can see, the 4 of us, we are here, not at Bomas of Kenya, where the results is going to be announced because of the opaque nature of how this phase has been handled. We therefore cannot take ownership on the results.
According to official results, Ruto has narrowly beat his rival and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga with 50.5% of the vote. The 77-year-old former Prime Minister, who got 48.8% of the vote, was running for the post for the 5th time. Ruto, in his acceptance speech, thanked the Kenyan voters for their support and told the opposition that there is no room for vengeance in his government.
I want to promise all the people of Kenya, whichever way they voted, that this will be their government. I know many are wondering, especially those who have done many things against us. I want to tell them that they have nothing to fear. There is no room. There is nothing. There is no room for vengeance. There is no room for looking back. We are looking into the future. I am acutely aware that our country is at a stage where we need all hands on deck.
News of Ruto's win spread in Raila Odinga's stronghold of Kisumu. Large numbers of protesters came to the streets of the lakeside city to denounce the results. Protesters hurled stones and burnt tires as they blocked roads. The police also fired tear gas to disperse the protesters from blocking the roads. Odinga supporters also entered the restricted area near the Election Commission on Monday, accusing electoral officers of tampering with the vote. Scenes of celebrations were also seen across Kenya, where Ruto supporters came to the streets in large numbers to celebrate his win. Ruto's win is currently being seen as a triumph for a man who shook up politics by appealing to struggling Kenyans on economic terms and not on ethnic ones. Along with celebrations, tensions are also running high for Ruto supporters. This is because Odinga's campaign can now challenge the results in the Supreme Court, as it did successfully in 2017. The court declared the 2017 vote invalid over claims of voter fraud. A fresh election was later held that was won by outgoing President Uhuru Kenyatta. The turnout in this year's election was lower than expected. According to reports, the election saw only 65% of voter turnout in the 9th of August vote. This reflects the wariness of Kenyans seeing the same long-time political figures on the ballot. Frustration over poor economic conditions and soaring cost of living crisis were also seen as the main reasons for the low voter enthusiasm this time around. For more details, let's now go over to my colleague Eric Njoka, who will get you up to date with what the recent results in the Kenyan presidential polls mean for Kenya.
Kenyan President-elect's life growing up is in complete contrast to what it is now. He has always credited his connection to the people from his humble beginnings. A boy from Sambut village who walked barefoot to school and topped the class. But who is William Samoei Ruto? Let's find out. Ruto was born in Kenya's western region in an industrial town called Eldoret. In the late 1980s, Ruto left to study botany and zoology at the University of Nairobi. Friends said they began noticing his focus on politics. In 1997, he challenged Reuben Chesire for the parliamentary seat of the Eldoret North constituency, and he won. He then shot to prominence as a youth organizer for former President Daniel Arap Moi, and eventually becoming one of Kenya's youngest lawmakers and ministers. He has served as Minister for Home Affairs, Agriculture and Higher Education. He had supported Odinga during hotly disputed elections in 2007, when 1,200 people were killed in the post-election violence that rocked the country then. Both he and Kenyatta faced charges at the International Criminal Court over the violence. That case later collapsed. Ruto then switched sides and became Kenyatta's deputy president in 2013. But in the long run, the bromance fell out after the 2017 election, when Kenyatta reconciled with Odinga and distanced himself from Ruto. Following yesterday's declaration of Ruto as president-elect, experts predict that Raila Odinga may challenge the results by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission (IEBC). So if he does, this is what will happen. He will have to file a petition challenging the results within 7 days. After being served, the winner will have 4 days to file a response to the petition, and the loser will be given 24 hours to file a rejoinder. The Supreme Court will then be required to convene a pre-trial conference within 8 days from the filing of the petition. The judges will then be required to hear the election dispute petition immediately after the pre-trial conference and proceed to deliver a judgment within 14 days of the filing of the petition. The Supreme Court may annul the elections and call for a rerun. It is still a wait-and-see kind of situation in Kenya.
For more analysis into the election results in Kenya, we are now being joined by Javas Bigambo from Nairobi, Kenya, who is a lawyer and governance expert. Thanks so much for joining us. My first question, now some are of the view that William Ruto's declaration is not legitimate. What does this imply exactly?
Well, I have to look at it then through the legal lenses that Article 138, sub-Article 10 of the Constitution, provides that upon tallying and verification of the results by the Commission, the chairperson of the Commission will declare those results. So the Constitution bestows upon the chair of the Commission the honors of making that declaration. And so with regard to declaration, the absence of the 4 commissioners from enjoining themselves in that declaration does not render the decision invalid. Secondly, it only paints a bad picture about the aspect of collegiality with regard to the leadership of the elections body. Now, the other question that some people are bringing up is about the IEBC Act that speaks to the issue of quorum and congruence of the commissioners in making a decision. Nonetheless, early this year, the Supreme Court of Kenya, while dispensing with the matter or the petition to do with an attempt to amend the Constitution under the Building Bridges Initiative, agreed with the petitioners that the quorum of the IEBC in making a decision is 3 and not 5.
Right.
And so the argument then falls flat, and the legitimacy holds about the declaration of William Ruto as the president-elect of the Republic of Kenya.
Right, just to follow up there, we've obviously seen scenes of protest, scuffles break out since the election results were announced. Was this expected at all, and what is it that the Kenyans want at this point?
Well, I would say that with keenness, the sporadic outburst or sporadic protests was anticipated because of how close this election was. And secondly, because of how hotly contested this election was and the anxiety that was building up and the great expectation for the win of Raila Odinga, given the fact that this was his 5th stab and now was getting the support of government and state machinery that was to his political benefit. So it was highly expected by his supporters that he will not lose this election. And so it was anticipated. Nonetheless, much into the night and early this morning, up to this moment, there are no reported cases of violence across the country. But there are cases reported of still anxiety, displeasure among the supporters of Raila Odinga. The police swung into action to contain the protesters. And I think it's reasonable to argue that peace and calm has been restored.
Right.
And maybe these protests last evening were just about releasing the pent-up energy and anger and displeasure upon the declaration of William Ruto as the president-elect.
Right, Javas, thank you so much for all those inputs, and thanks for joining us on WION World is One at this hour. WION World is One is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.